And without further delay, let's begin today's event. I would now like to turn it over to Steve Lanzano, President and CEO of TVB. Steve, you have the floor.
Thank you, Erin, and welcome, everybody. This is another in our series of webinars on automated buying. We have a terrific webinar today. I spent a lot of time with Seth and Robert when we were prepping for this, and I think there's a lot of terrific information here, and that's going to be really helpful as we move this forward. So first, let me introduce my panelists today. To my immediate left is Seth Haberman, who founded Visible World in 2000 with the goal of transforming advertising, production, and delivery to achieve greater relevance and effectiveness. With a track record of success marked by milestones, including an Emmy Award, which I should have told Seth to bring here because I've never really seen one.
I do carry it around a lot.
Maybe you should wear it around your neck or something. That'd be cool. Not only including the Emmy Award, but he's done some terrific work with today's largest companies and some of the major advertising executives out there, including the agency side. So welcome, Seth.
Thank you very much.
And to Seth's left is Robert Malandra, who is the Senior Vice President, Finance and Television at Sinclair. Robert oversees the development of Sinclair's business intelligence system, yield management tools, and is currently working on other initiatives, including the Audience Network and Sinclair's partnership for advanced advertising with Visible World. So, Robert, thanks for joining us today. As I said, we've got a lot of things to cover today. We've got some audio visuals we're going to be using, and we're going to break this down really into 4 segments. Segment number 1, I'm going to ask Seth about is the TV ecosystem. What do they see? What's happening? What does it mean? Why did they get purchased, and why did Comcast buy them? And then a real long discussion I had with Seth about this, which I thought was very interesting in terms of what is their philosophy? What is the mission? What is the philosophy of Visible World in this space? And then I think a really interesting segment is going to be, what do we believe about TV? What does Visible World and Sinclair believe about TV? And in the context of what's happening with digital and data, et cetera, what should change and what really shouldn't change? And then finally, we'll get into real specifics in terms of the high-yield platform and OxMix, which is very, very interesting. So with that, I'm going to start off with the first question. First thing is, Seth, why did Comcast buy you?
Well, when you sell a company, which I've done now 3 or 4 times, they don't actually tell you that. So I don't have that specific answer. But I do know why cable believes in the ecosystem. Because if you're in the cable industry, if you're in MVPD, you have affiliations with programmers, you have affiliations with local broadcasters, and their cost of content keeps going up. And they make money in 2 ways, right? You make money from advertising, and you make money from affiliation or retransmission fees.
Right.
And if advertising isn't doing well, you're going to charge more for retransmission, and that goes directly to the consumer. And nobody wants to be taxing the consumer more for television. And so it's in the interest of everyone that advertising is successful. Right? That's the most important thing to take away from today is there's sort of we're all in this together to make the TV ecosystem work. And so we have an abiding interest in that TV ecosystem.
So can you talk a little bit about the engineering platform services, your EPS?
Sure. So I'm in a group that includes companies like Freewheel, This Technology, Visible World, and we are advertising platform as part of a group within Comcast that sells to programmers, that sells to local broadcasters, that sells to broadcasters, that sells to other cable operators, and technology to make inventory more valuable. That's our mission. So we're an outward group, right? Our focus is helping people make their inventory more valuable. And a collection of very good technology companies and Strata on the buy side to help companies who own television inventory or own digital inventory associated adjunct to television to make it more valuable.
Great. And in fact, a little tidying up, if you have any questions at any time, please type them in, and we'll get to those questions immediately. I like to stay on topic when we have any questions. So one of the biggest conversations we had, and I thought was very interesting, was your philosophy and how your philosophy may be different than what you would say the traditional philosophy is in this space. So if you could get into that in a little bit more detail.
Sure, and so I put this picture up that, so somebody may say, why is there a picture of Rome besieging Jerusalem?
Right.
And the first time I used this picture, Robert remembers this, was when I spoke to the Pearl Consortium, to the board of the Pearl Consortium. And this is a very famous scene in history that Rome is about to sack Jerusalem. And the interesting thing, you can sort of see the detail there, is there's a fire in the city. The Roman army is on the outside. And what happened is, for those of you who know the history, is they're fighting inside while Rome is surrounding. And Tacitus, the great Roman man of letters, commented that this is the first time he's been in a siege, and he's a historian, where there's more fighting going on inside. This is the zealots, and they're burning each other's grain and things like that. And so this is a moment in history that I think that we can learn from.
Okay.
And the perspective is that in the television world, in the TVB, in the television world, we're doing nothing but fighting inside, right? There's a fight between the owners of network inventory and the owners of local inventory. Should share go to local or share go to network? In the local level, we fight among television stations. We fight among the interconnect, all for dollars. In the meantime, our entire industry is being besieged by digital, who wants nothing more than to destroy the whole thing.
Right.
And so the philosophy that we have, starting from the first question you asked me, is how do we work together? How do we not end up what happens a few days later in this image, where digital sacks our Jerusalem? And that's the beginning of the perspective that we have, is that we're codependent on each other. It's not altruism. It's not like we're great guys and things like that. We're codependent. We need to work with each other to be successful, because not just what's going on outside, but the scale.
Right.
If I can go on,
please.
There's a battle right now, right? There's an enormous battle when you have content. Right? If I have a pilot in Hollywood, how do I make the most money from it? Do I go to Netflix and say it's a subscription? Do I go to Amazon and it's part of an unlimited system with Prime, and maybe I can also sell it on Amazon? Do I go to Google, which is all advertising, digital advertising? Do I go to Apple, which will cross-subsidize content by selling phones? Or do I go to the TV ecosystem? Right. And so it's not just a battle of, two of the same technologies. It's different philosophies. And we're believers of that battle, of that notion that you need a combination of advertising and a combination of subscription. And that is the best way to monetize content. And just to give people a sense of scale, you can sort of look, Google's advertising revenue is, 5 times larger than all of U.S. local broadcast? That's all of your constituency and the people who aren't part of your constituency. That gives you the sense of scale they have. And the reason that's important to think about it is that advertising tracks with GDP. So when advertising grows, if you're going to grow, you're growing with GDP. And if you want to grow faster than that, you're taking share from someone else. So the internet grew from taking share from newspapers, right? Newspapers, 60% of the revenue is gone. So we don't want the television business to be the newspaper business. We want to grow, which means that we have to grow not just local broadcast growing against network or local broadcast growing one against another or against cable. We have to grow against other channels. We have to grow against newspaper. We have to grow against direct mail, but we have to grow against digital. We have to be as good or better than digital. And so that's why I keep that notion of there's something much worse outside, and we have to be able to combat that.
Okay. One of the things that I was very interested in, and when I saw your presentation, I think it would be good to go through is, how do you see things? What should change in terms of the TV ecosystem, and what should stay the same? When you go out and you talk to advertisers, agencies, and when you also talk to broadcasters, what do you see out there, what we have to keep, and what's out there that we have to, we really have to change if we're going to play in this field?
So I have an observation, and it's anecdotal.
Okay.
But my observation is that for a generation, selling TV was relatively easy, and growing in TV was relatively easy, right? For not the last few years, but up until then, if you ran a cable network, if you ran a local broadcast station, life was good. And I think we forgot the core elements of what makes television so valuable, and I'll talk a little bit about that.
Please.
But I think we forgot what makes us so strong. And I think when everyone sort of said, wow, TV's being challenged and digital's come along and challenging us, people said, well, we have to be just like digital. And I think that's a mistake. And if you want, I'll
Please, I
take
go
you
through because I think you've got some an interesting viewpoint here.
So the biggest, I don't know how well the people can see the slide, is the biggest thing that hurts television is fragmentation.
Right.
And there's a lot of sources of fragmentation, right? There's fragmentation from all the data that people have, because what each one of those pieces of fragmentation does is it narrows an audience down, right? Instead of saying I have men 18 to 49, I have left-handed, red-haired men who rent houses. And the smaller those things are, the less the strength of broadcast comes out. I have more ways of distributing content, right? So I can distribute it, live, terrestrially, over cable, but now I can also distribute it through VOD, through TV everywhere, through DVRs, through iPads, through phones, through glasses and things like that. I have more channels than I've ever had before, and I have more business models, and each one of those things fragments that. And fragmentation is a good and a bad side, right? Because fragmentation on a good side says, well, I have more information about those little pieces. But on the bad side, it says this thing that made television so powerful, this idea of reach, is compromised, and scale. And people have forgotten to that, and so quickly genuflected just to this idea of being, well, I just want to have, targeting and things like that. And they'd say, like, well, let's just make TV all into targeting, right? The change is easy, right? We just have all targeting and things like that. I feel like my style.
I do like that. It's really good. Very nice.
The problem is all of targeting can't replace reach. Reach is way too valuable. And reach is valuable because of notions of audience. It's valuable because so much of what we think about targeting and tenders and things like that, so much of it lacks the scientific rigor. And so how do we know? Growth comes from often people we don't know as opposed to people we know. I had an argument a few years ago with someone you'll know, and they were talking about targeting technology, and they said, I want to target cat food ads to cat owners and dog food ads to dog owners. And I said, that's the stupidest thing in the world. How'd you get to be the head of an agency? Because
I know who you're talking about, but we'll leave the name out.
Because what? Don't get me in trouble.
No. Because
what does that mean? It means that if you're in the cat food business, the only thing you're going to do is try and steal share.
Right.
And that doesn't work very well. Steal a point or two. But where's your growth coming from? People who don't buy cat food, people who don't have cats yet. That's the greatest source of growth that you're going to have. And so by targeting too narrowly, you're eclipsing growth.
I'll give you an example. This is a true story example. I won't say who the car manufacturer was.
All the secrets we have.
I know. The car manufacturer was, and it was a business I worked on. And this was many years ago. And they had a new car line coming out, low-end car line coming out. And they decided they only wanted to reach a very small, specific segment of the audience. And we showed them there was a much larger opportunity later on. They only wanted to do it, and they only wanted to do it in digital. And they came out, and I don't remember what the unit sales were the first month, but it was like down 80% from where they wanted to be. And this happened the second month. And in the third month, they went and said, you know what, let's use your recommendation, and let's go with TV, and let's extend it out. And all of a sudden, their goal number we actually eclipsed by 500%. And I think a lot of advertisers have learned that, yes, there is, obviously you want to be as targeted as possible, but you don't want to be so targeted that you're limiting your audience and you're limiting your opportunity.
I hear more and more of that sort of anecdotes today. I hear a lot of people realizing that too much money into digital, too focused, has been a mistake. And that's part of what I think we'll see is strong upfronts.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think you're already seeing, and I hear this not only anecdotally but directly from some major CPG advertisers that we went wrong analogy, over the top too far on the one side, and that the dollars have to migrate back to TV because when we migrated it back, we've seen the sales again. In fact, the ARF conference, Bill Harvey is going to come out with his research where he took 12 advertisers and they increased their TV, and the increment was, I think, 4.6-fold higher on the increment they added to TV. I think a lot of advertisers said, gee, we went way too far on the digital. Not that you shouldn't do digital. We always talk about it. It's not TVR, it's TVN. But I think so many marketers went so far the other direction. Now they're coming back, and now you're hearing in the upfront marketplace it's going to be up for the first time.
Because they underestimated the value of reach.
Yes.
And they thought they underestimated the value of reach, and they underestimated the simultaneous reach, right? This is a couple of years old, but the graph still basically looks the same, which is television has always been priced that you pay more per person for larger shows.
That's correct.
And some people think that this is irrational, right? Some people think it doesn't make any sense. And you have to think a lot about why it doesn't make sense. But this has always been true. In all media, this has consistently been true that we pay for hits. And so the danger, the thing that we have to watch out for as an industry is that's not the way digital is sold, right? Digital is sold on an audience basis.
Correct.
That doesn't differentiate whether it's on an Academy Award or a Golden Globes or Monday Night Football. And so what happens to most of our money is made, on our hit shows. And so if you have audience targeting, if you say I'm going to charge the same no matter of context, that's a giant sucking noise out of television.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't work in our interest. And we have to, and I see companies going to television stations selling programmatic solutions that said, we're going to sell all of your stuff by audience. And that's like mass suicide. And yet people, because they haven't thought it through, because maybe they're new in the business, because we've sort of forgotten some of our research, they go ahead with these schemes. They said, sure, that's a good idea. We'll try and sell just by audience. We'll add some data. Just doing that alone is a way, it's just a way, hastening the end.
Well, and to your point, I mean, each impression, one impression is not equal to another impression. I think we've done a huge presentation that's out there now regarding the differences between impressions, and then an impression where you're considered an impression of half the screen, you see half the screen for 2 seconds, versus on the local broadcast side where you have to see the full screen, for 300 seconds to be counted. One impression doesn't equal another impression, and within as you're talking about the context of where it is, one has a bigger impression, i.e. the word impression, than somewhere else.
And it's the context. I'll give you an example. So I put this slide up. Audiences are not a commodity, meaning you pay the same amounts for gold, whether I buy 1 bar or 500 bars, but audiences are not a commodity. And the interesting thing about that is that when we buy a product, we need influence from multiple directions. If you decide to go to a movie, you see an ad, and you say, did you see this ad? Did you see this? Are you interested in this movie? And that's where content becomes the fulcrum of these conversations. It becomes an important point. I always say that the conversation that people say, what did you watch last night, is a much more subtle conversation. It's not just I don't have anything to talk to you about. It's a setting a stage to say, what do we have in common? Because if I know we have something in common, then I know the other things that you're going to tell me are worthwhile. And so when I say to you, what did you see last night? And I say, I saw that also. Then those other conversations, that fulcrum of content, become more meaningful. And you can become a source of information, a source of recommendations for me, that if we're off all doing our things, if we're just a commodity, we don't have. And that's the thing about television, is it understands the value of a simultaneous audience. You see, the best example, of course, is Super Bowl, right? Where it's so explicit, the conversations of the ads. But those things are happening all the time. We just don't register them as carefully. But that's the key to TV, is that reach and simultaneous reach. And there's nothing else that can do that today. and we've forgotten that. And part of what we're trying to do with Oxmix and our technology is not only remind people of it, but build technology that institutionalizes those types of things.
You know, that was a good lead-in for me right now to my next question, and that is, so talk about your high-yield platform. What is it for broadcasters? And then we're going to have to get poor Robert to talk in a second about Oxmix.
Robert's not shy, so.
No, I didn't think he was very shy. So why don't you talk about that?
The idea, I have this slide I call the hidden value of broadcast, is to unlock those values of broadcast, unlock the values of TV. So in a fragmented universe, and I apologize for the cutting off, there are two things that you can do when the universe is getting fragmented. So one is you can target, right? The other is you can aggregate, and you have to aggregate intelligently. And so in all cases, what does it take to do that? You need data, right? Because if you're aggregating, you need to know along what lines. You don't just want to randomly put people together. You want to think about how they fit together. You need automation, because you can't do it. Right. You can't do it manually.
Right.
And you need optimization. You need to say, how do I make all of this? That's what we call programmatic. So that collection of aggregation and targeting, using data, using automation, optimization, that's what we call programmatic. Not a race to the bottom, but a race up, working the way television does. And so what we've done with Sinclair is that take our high-yield platform that runs on local broadcast and apply it across multiple television stations to intelligently aggregate impressions across many, many stations, to tap into national budgets as opposed to local budgets, to use all sorts of advanced data so we can report things, not so that we can fragment our audience, but we can report about our audiences and automate it at scale. And that's the nature of Sinclair starts with an incredible scale, and we have technology that loves scale, and that's the basis of how we started.
Yeah, a lot of it is we're using programmatic in a different way. When people talk about programmatic, they associate it with cheap, because television in recent years has adopted so many of the trappings of the digital business, and we've covered a few of the detrimental ones here. The idea here, though, is to aggregate content at scale and create a brand new sales channel. And so when we were looking at companies, when I did a lot of M&A work in the last 3 years buying television stations, and what became apparent to me in looking at financials from one after the other, nobody had a line that said network. Everybody had local, everybody had national, which is really regional or traditional national, right? Nobody had any kind of network. So when we were building up the platform, we were thinking about, well, what happens in a post-consolidation world where you have fewer players? What are the opportunities out there? And the opportunity hit us with Steve Marks. A couple of years ago, we started something called Audience Network, where we are selling across our platform, which is about 40%. And the idea of Oxmix is to build essentially a nonprofit co-op that aggregates content from different broadcasters all around the country that creates a lot of scale and a single sales platform from which to sell it.
Can you go into a little more detail on it? You've got a couple of slides here, which I think really talks about it being a co-op. I think that's something that needs to be explained a little bit more.
Right. A lot of people, it's kind of weird as a company when we have done a lot of ventures in the past.
And by the way, everyone is Googling Oxmix to try and figure out.
Oh, okay. Okay. Just as a reference, so we were banging our heads together for weeks trying to think of a name for this initiative, and Seth actually came up with Oxmix, which is a reference to an old character in a 1967 Star Trek episode.
Really? Yeah. Were you a Star Trek fan?
I guess, and I don't remember that.
So there's an episode, as witnessed by the Fashions, where they land on a planet whose culture is modeling gangster
Chicago. Yes, that's right.
And the lead gangster is named Bella Oxmix. And the title of the episode is called "The Piece of the Action."
Piece of the Action.
Piece of the Action.
I think it had to do when we were at NAB, Steve Marks and we were meeting with different broadcasters telling them about this concept, about how we don't want to compete in this world. We want to join forces and basically be a co-op. And I think between Steve's Brooklyn accent and my Philly accent, he invoked the imagery of mobsters, I guess, meeting with the families.
The last scene is what happens is one of the crew of the Enterprise leaves their tricorder on the planet, and so they're wondering what's going to happen because that's the basis of all the technology for Starfleet. And the Captain Kirk says, well, in a few years, they're going to want a piece of our action.
There you go.
That's the genesis.
So we're all challenged in terms of the broadcast business, and if you look at the broadcast advertising business, the local broadcast, it's been growing slowly. You get a lot of demand around political, but outside of political, it's a slow growth business. And part of what we want to do is to transform that, to serve as inventory to other venues that broadcasters have never sold in. It's a $50 billion industry that broadcasters, by and large, don't participate in at all. Or if they do, they participate in a very fragmented approach. So the idea would be, when we started this whole thing a couple of years ago, we looked at 19 different technology companies, and initially we were going to go out and buy one. And we found Visible World, and we found that we could work with these guys. And we've been working for the last 2 years collaboratively adopting their technology, which was focused on the cable world, to bring it to broadcast. So now this technology can talk to automation and therefore traffic systems and enable what could never be enabled. So the combination of having broadcasters in the business model team up with this technology means that we can chase dollars that nobody gets right now.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about that because I think that's the opportunity. I mean, you can build that, and I use the word automated versus programmatic because everybody has a different definition of programmatic, and obviously a lot of people just think it's race to the bottom. So I use the word we're automating the process, and as we get more data, maybe we call it datamation or something, but whatever. That's right, exactly right. Well, so the opportunity I always say is as you spoke about, Robert, there's this big national chunk of change out there where I hear from the big major agencies saying, we want your local, no mas on the long tail for cable. We've gotten AD cable. We want your inventory. You got to make it easier for us to get access to it.
Right. And so the demand that's there's just simply not enough broadcast points out there to fill demand. They have to go to cable for a lot of it, and the audiences in cable are, quite frankly, inferior to even the worst of what we have in broadcast, by and large. And so the idea was to figure out a way to take that demand and our need industry-wide to grow our business and come up with a structure that would work. And everybody is facing the same kind of risks. There's a technology risk. If you go out there and try to build something yourself, it is very expensive. Not only that, it is, will you get adoption with it, whatever. There's a lot of risks associated with it. So when we looked at this, we said, why not come up with a very transparent, low-risk organization that other broadcasters can join, they can have equity in, that nobody really controls other than a board. Like Sinclair is not looking to control box mix. We're looking at making our money the old-fashioned way through selling advertising. The central part of it, if you think about it like a cable interconnect that's owned by several cable companies these days, or the Florida Orange Co-op.
It's like a JV.
Yes, it's its own entity, so it's going to have a staff.
Got it.
And it will have a central billing function where, after they sell and they bill it out, and the distribution of all those proceeds goes directly to the broadcasters that advertise on any of those particular campaigns. So what we're trying to do is come up with a very low-risk opportunity for broadcasters to get into programmatic. And the cool thing about what we're doing is we're broadcasters too. And we're worried about programmatic because it has been a race to the bottom. If you remember, digital people invented programmatic. They had to. There's a high volume, low price type of inventory that they're dealing with.
And unlimited inventory.
Exactly. They had no choice. That paradigm,
but on the buy side
works, but the paradigm doesn't.
Because it didn't work out for sellers. When this whole idea of audience targeting, look what happened to the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. People said, okay, I could buy the Wall Street Journal subscriber, the people go to their website for cheaper and other prices. Right. That's not a strategy that you want to copy, right? And so we try and build technology that doesn't work that way, that values context, that values reach, the things that local broadcasters are strong, and that aggregates it together. Because if you remember that chart that I showed in the beginning, as each local broadcaster grows, we incrementally grow because the CPM will grow geometrically. So as more people join, there's more money for all. It's not a linear growth, and that's the magic thing about it. And the technology can work on today's technology. It can work on some of the new next generation, ATSC. I don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah, we can get into. There's one of the beautiful things about Oxmix is that because it represents a sales platform, central sales platform, if you will, that it enables other ventures that broadcasters are facing in the future. If you play long ball on this, broadcasters are getting more and more into content plays. And so there's ways, this would be a central vehicle from which they can monetize those content.
Why don't you talk about that a little bit more?
Well, for example, there's shows that could be produced that could go out across the country that could be underwritten if you have national advertisers. Right now, the most common one in broadcast is a lot of particularly smaller markets like to show high school sports, for example. And just as a side benefit, one of the issues is that there's high engagement, but it's hard to sell that. And you could sell it locally enough, but really the money and it doesn't really support it well. But the audience for high school sports and the audience that is associated with kids sports, youth sports, is major, and there are opportunities out there to sell that nationally if you have a vehicle like Oxmix. And in an ATSC3 world, where, and I don't want to get too far into the ATSC3 possible environment, but you have a lot, there could be a whole lot more in terms of sales channels out there. So having a vehicle like this is essentially a non-prof that you as a broadcaster can own a part of and be on the board, selling things for you and monetizing for you, allows you to overcome a lot of the regulatory limitations that we see as broadcasters. As broadcasters, we can't own more than 40% of the country these days. And so the regulation tends to keep us small, and it limits the ability to grow. So a structure like this enables that type of growth on a lot of different ways, primarily on advertising, but also on content and ATSC3.
Now, you did some, I don't know how much you can get into it. I know you did some work with USIM, the media agency, and I think you worked with Tribune on that to create the scale. That seemed to be very successful.
Yeah, I mean, what we're trying to do is initially before we're going to be completing and launching this venture in Q4. So what we want to do is establish working relationships with other broadcasters, and we're kind of clear with everybody that we're setting up this business. We don't want to set every one of the ground rules, so it's a collaborative thing. And right now, on Oxmix, we're working with a launch team where we're signing up a few broadcasters just to work with us to get the product to market. Then we're going to expand it beyond that. But there's a lot of things to figure out in terms of installing the technology and in terms of implementing the day-to-day.
Sure. Again, if anyone has any questions, please type them in. So we do have a few questions up here. The first one question, and I'll read it word for word. Isn't this really just inventory maximization and not true programmatic as is executed in the digital landscape?
I don't know what the definition of true programmatic is. If that means real time?
Real time and data, I would imagine.
Well, it is data.
Right.
Because we overlay data. But I don't think it's real time, and I don't think real time has to be a definition of programmatic, nor do I think real time is something that we should rush to adopt.
Right. Agreed.
It's not look, if you're if you're Toyota, you have a budget. You don't want to maybe hit your target or not because you lost a auction at some point.
Right.
It doesn't really make sense for people. Look, everyone at some point in their life decides, it's a good idea if I get into the commodity business. And for almost everyone, it works out to be a terrible thing, right? The airlines learned that. Wall Street learned that. Like they all. So, advertisers will make the same mistakes also. But in the end of the day, they have a business to run, not a financial services firm to run.
Now, one of the questions I always get regarding automated buying is, so how do the sellers of local TV advertising fit in a automated programmatic world? How will their role change? It seems to be one of the, anytime anybody brings up programmatic automated buying, that seems to be the follow-up question. So how will a salesman's role change?
Well, for participants in OxMix, it represents a separate and distinct sales channel. So it's really a collaboration between the OxMix organization and other broadcasters. So a local AE is not going to see a difference in that. There are other technologies that are out there, that programmatic technologies that seek to enable that on the local level. And we have some things, some ideas long term for that, but for the next year, it's basically network and not an impact on local. Do you want to add to that?
Sure. The technology comes with APIs, so that DSPs and things like that.
That's actually a good place to go. I mean, how important is standardized APIs in this space?
I think they have to be easy to work with, transparent. I think they have to protect the broadcaster's inventory. In other words, you don't want someone knocking on your door asking, we sell it for $30, we sell it for $29, and just pushing the floor. This is, I think, largely what happened when Google was in the TV business with Google TV ads. A lot of what they did was try and figure out what the floor was.
Right.
And so part of what our API does is it injects noise. And so you can't do that. We're not going to let you just try and figure out what our yield curve is. And so we believe in APIs because some of the customers are going to want to buy that way. Mm-hmm. I think primarily because this is big business, right? We're going to talk about large stakes of inventory and large buys across the country with multiple broadcast partners. It's probably not going to be conducted that way. But certainly there are people who buy that way. You want to make sure that you're able to work that way, and our system does have an API for anyone to be able to fit in.
Okay, we have a few minutes left, so if anyone has any questions, please type them in before we end the webinar. But if you could talk about maybe the 2 or 3, not only opportunities, but the 2 or 3 challenges before we really start to see scale in terms of automated buying.
Well, I think, look, automated buying exists, it's not a technological challenge anymore. It's set to do it on the behalf of the seller also.
Right.
I think that's what the problem is that it became just another instrument of procurement and another person to take a cut of the share. I mean, if you look in digital, the intermediaries take 40 or 50% of the share. Could you imagine that happening in television? So a lot
we would be in a lot of trouble if a lot of things happen on the digital.
So a lot of what we're trying to do, the construct that Robert envisioned, is trying to put the control, the decisions like that, keep them resident in the hands of the broadcasters, so that revenue can be maximized and not be put at risk, while at the same time providing the benefits of data and providing the benefits of automation and true end-to-end buys and transparency for the partners. Right. And so I think the biggest challenge is to remind everyone that Rome is at your door. It's too easy to say I'm in my market, it's just a little business. It's to remind everyone what the threat is to the television business, and that action is needed. I think that's the single most important thing. That's the single biggest challenge, is we're all competing with each other.
Right.
In one form or another, we're all competing. But there's a bigger there if we work together.
Yeah, agreed. Robert, last word?
Same type of sentiment. Really, the idea is that we can create enormous value through collaboration. And I see this as a way of, there's a slide here, if you go a little bit further.
Sure.
This is an interesting slide, and I don't mean to personalize it with Sinclair or Wolf Blitzer.
Oh, Wolf. I thought you were going to talk more about Wolf.
Well, I do beat up Wolf Blitzer a lot, but just to give you an indication, we have, the idea of Oxmix is to take inventory throughout the day, avoiding network time periods, network prime time.
Right.
All right, but throughout the day, I mean, its broadcast has so much more in terms of its audience. Wolf Blitzer at 6 o'clock, for example, across the country, does about 197,000 impressions. Our group, which just covers 40%, is 2.5 times that. And if you were to scale our group up, you're talking about anywhere from 9 to 16x. That's the power of local broadcast. And we really want to have local broadcast be recognized for what it is, the best media branding vehicle around. And we really want to abandon a lot of the detrimental impact of associating our buying and our behavior with digital.
It's interesting because what you're showing here, not only is this is a huge opportunity for a national advertiser.
Yeah.
Because this is access to inventory they can't get nationally. And just look at the difference between the audiences. Just with Sinclair, imagine if you had 10 broadcast groups involved with this.
Sure.
It would be thousandfold higher.
There you go. That's the idea.
That's the opportunity.
Everyone wins.
Seth, Robert, thank you very much. This was terrific. I think it was great for the audience. If anybody has any questions after this, please send it, and we'll get to Seth and Robert to answer this. I think that's the exact question I asked at the very end. But thank you. And this will also be taped and will be on the website in a couple of days.
Living infamy.
Living infamy. That's
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you very much. Erin, to you.
Okay, thanks again, everyone. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and fill out the questionnaire that should be in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen before disconnecting. If you have filled that out, this does conclude our program. You may now disconnect.